we're live. I have to open a tab here with the link to YouTube.
Hello, 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 amazing hackers. I hope you're all doing well today. So, I have this amazing guest with me today. I call him Brute, but sir, can you please introduce yourself to our viewers?
Hi guys, Brutelogic here. I'm also known as my real name, Rodolfo Assis. I'm a Brazilian guy, self-taught computer hacker who got specialized in cross-site scripting. Probably you guys have heard about me. I have a blog dedicated to cross-site scripting. I used to bypass stuff and publish on Twitter, Facebook, uh, sometimes YouTube. Getting back to that, and and I'm also the owner, creator, maintainer, developer, etc. All the things regarding Knox, an online discovery service, cross-site script discovery. Uh, that's pretty much of it. I have years of experience in this field. I'm kind of very active in the community, and I'm asking for your forgiveness in advance because my spoken English may be not so well, but if you can understand me, that's fine. And we are going to talk with my friend here, Wesley, about cross-site scripting, all your questions, his questions, even my own questions. They got to this now. So let's
Awesome.
start it.
Thank you very much. That was really cool. My first question, of course, is what got you into cross-site scripting? I think that's an obvious one.
Yeah, yeah. I got into cross-site scripting pretty much because most of people, I guess, do that too. Those who are interested in the knowledge itself, because at some point of the time, I've learned hacking in general, web hacking, techniques, vulnerabilities. But when I stumbled upon cross-site scripting, I found it hard to understand. Really, I could understand after some explanation, but I couldn't reproduce things. I couldn't bypass. I couldn't come with those terrible stuff that I was seeing. So I started to dig deep and to look for basic resources to make me evolve step by step, and I didn't find anything. So I decided to go in the wild, after finding a site which was doing full disclosure, which is open bug bout now. It was XSS exposed at that time. So I saw that they have some rankings, to post submit cross-site scripting vulnerabilities in the wild. So I decided to go to the top 10, started to look for, to train, to practice. And for my surprise, I found it was not that hard, There was a lot of vulnerabilities out there, so I started to find them, to play with them, and getting higher in the rank. So in about 3 or 4 months, I become the number one there. I decided to retire and started to talk about cross-site script for the world, with a blog, with tweets, everything. I really got passionate about cross-site script after that period.
That's really awesome. That's really cool. It reminds me of my story a little bit. I got into hacking by doing OSCP. Cross-site scripting was not very important there, but I wanted to become a pen tester, and to become a pen tester, I had to have some kind of experience beside OSCP. So I did some bug bounties, and the first vulnerability that I found was a cross-site scripting vulnerability. And the second one was a cross-site scripting again, and I was hooked from that moment on. Like, really easy cross-site scripting vulnerabilities, but I've noticed that a lot of these vulnerabilities seem to be somewhat hidden, especially in bug bounties, because a lot of the low-hanging fruit cross-site scriptings have been taken, and I'm mostly talking about HTML injections. Um, there are a lot of other things as well besides HTML injections. But when I started learning, all I could see was HTML injection, HTML injection, HTML injection. Like, can you elaborate a little bit on all of the different contexts that you find important?
It's mainly HTML and JavaScript. I stress a lot for people, regardless of the understanding level. You can be lead, you can be a master in cross-site script, but I always stress the fact that we always have to get the basics again, to come back to the basics, because basics are really not enough to stress, aren't enough to stress, because we can always find something different when we revisit something, even if it's basic, especially if it's basic. So I tell people usually that there are two main contexts, HTML and JavaScript. Of course, there are DOM-based stuff. There are header injection. There are a lot of topics, in cross-site script. We all know that, but always stick to the basics. If you can't, if you fail at a basic case, you can deal with more complicated stuff, So you have to be sure you don't miss the basics.
Very true, very true. That's always something that I've noticed with hacking or cross-site scripting. A lot of people seem to think they can just open a random target and get to hacking away like crazy without even understanding the application, and then they encounter like a WAF or something, and then they completely freeze up. Like, do you have some tips for people who encounter a WAF on how they can handle it?
Yeah, people usually ask about that, and I'm still planning a work on a special work, maybe a book, maybe some application or two on that specifically. But bypass in general, it's about for me, right? My way to deal with. It's a black box task, you don't have access to the code behind it, so it's mainly by trial and error. So while you are trying and getting errors, you try to figure out what happened in the other side. For example, in cross-site script, we have a lot of XSS vectors, which have an event handler, right? On something, on click, on mouse, over, on load, etc. So that a good filter will try to block them. And it's very easy to block if you think about it. You just have to catch the on, the on characters, followed by something, and with some bytes that we can put before the equal sign, and something that comes after the equal sign. So we can catch with a regular expression. So you have to know that someone at the other side, someone who coded the WAF or who coded the rule that the WAF is using, thought about that. He's aware of that. So you have to think like he thought, but someone can argue, but Brute, why we find bypass easily with event handler like on pointer raw update? Because it's a new one and the guy didn't notice yet. They did not update the WAF yet. So sometimes a novelty, something that's new in the community on Twitter or in social media, it's easier for us to get that information used against them than they to use to protect from us. So it's good to be always with the news, always tuned to the latest bypass techniques and stuff that comes to the community.
Very
so
true.
That's these are my suggestions. Try and error and keep it updated about the latest techniques.
That's very good suggestions for the trial and error. One thing that people sometimes ask me, and I'm sure they ask you as well, is how do I bypass this specific WAF? if you ask any of us, it would really help if you include everything that you've already tried and what the results are to us. That way, at least we can quickly understand what's already happening. And for those latest bypasses, what I regularly do is I will go to Google, I will go and look for for WAF bypasses and even CSP bypasses as well, and I will just Google for the latest results within the last week or so, and then automatically you will find new research popping up on cross-site scripting bypasses. That's how I keep up to date, and with Twitter as well, just following some people like you, Brute. You usually retweet those, so that's how I keep up to date. One other
Yeah.
question that I had is, I look up to you. I look up to you a lot. Do you have some people that you look up to that we can follow?
Sorry.
Like, I
Can you
look up to
please?
you. You are my hero in cross-site scripting. Do you have some people that you look up to on Twitter that you follow that you can recommend to us that we should follow?
I could point to some guys because everyone in this community is not alone. Everyone learned something from someone at some point. But because I've decided to be like a lonely rider on that matter, since the beginning. I've struggled a lot to find my space in that field of research. We even have a lot of competition in that field, a lot
Definitely.
of egos too. I can't blame anyone because I'm just one of them. So I don't have anyone that come to my mind now, but it's just because that position that I had to assume,
Definitely.
that role that I had to use. So I'm usually the guy who tries to come with new stuff. So I thank you a lot, all the community who likes my work, who follow me and gives me support. And I thank all the guys that came before me with that knowledge. Uh, Robert Hansen, and several guys from the Slackers forum, the old Slackers forum, that they are out there doing that stuff too. Ashar Javed, an Indian guy, he's doing a good work on cross-site script too. Alone too, he's another guy that seems to be alone doing that stuff. There are so many names, man. Probably
Yeah.
the community knows them more than myself. So
It's crazy.
uh,
Like most of the people
yeah,
like you, most of the people that are at the top, they work alone. I also decided when I wanted to start bug bounties, I was going to carve my own path, and I do cross-site scripting. I also do IDOR, and I also do broken access control, and that's my thing, like the functional, very, very deep testing. Because all the cross-site scriptings that I found, they're not hard to find. They're very basic attack vectors, like an iframe or something, but they're just hidden so deep in the application in functionality that nobody ever uses. So it's like you say, it all comes down to knowing your basics very, very well. For example, knowing that if a
that
value, if it gets reflected in a table header, that then you have to look, that's the stuff that, like, for me, the cross-site scripting, it's how shall I put this? It's very deep of a field. There's so much research that we can do into it, and I was wondering, like, how do you research your stuff? How do you research new things?
that's a pretty good question, man. Because even myself, I think about that. In the past, I have found so many cool stuff, especially about the now that is not, but there Chrome and Chromium based browsers, the XS auditor. So it used to be an anti cross site script filter, which was pretty hard to bypass it, and I always got
interested in bypass it. I don't know why. I think just because the range of Chrome users worldwide, so we just needed to make it happen to make cross-site script a really dangerous weapon. So, but when I look back and think about how I came to those bypasses, I remember it was trial and error, right? Like I said, I was trying stuff and getting getting feedback from the browser to know what's happening, if it could block or not. But what was motivating me and what I was looking for, how I was looking for it, it's hard to tell, because we have several ideas at the same time in the head. Sometimes you read a blog from someone else in another subject, but that gives you some understanding of that subject that you can apply to yours. That you can apply to your strategy, to your approach, so you get inspired by other things. I think it's pretty much like that. You get inspired by other stuff from other guys, from even other vulnerabilities or even other fields. You know.
Yeah, and understanding those vulnerabilities is a big part of it for me as well. Like when I see one of
Yeah.
those tweets, I try to understand it to its fullest. Like what's happening here? The guy is using slashes instead of spaces. Okay, that's a bypass mechanism. That's very interesting. All of that research and how you do it, because like a lot of people, they will start using some attack factors that they found online. They will have this big cheat sheet with 150 cross-site scripting attack factors, and they will have no idea what they're doing. That's the totally wrong way of taking this for me.
Yeah, but this man, it's the impression we have because we get all that stuff at a time. If you are the guy, I think that's why I try to get alone myself too, because there is so much stuff to learn at the same time. If you read your Twitter timeline, there's a lot of good info, a lot.
Definitely.
So at least me, I can't keep pace with that. I probably most of people out there can't too. There's a lot of things to know, new things to know, and a lot of things to check too, because I just don't buy stuff that way easily. People tweet some, oh, I got that vulnerability or that bypass, so read my blog post about it. Okay, I will read, but I will read with a grain of salt. I will think that guy is not missing something. Is that true? Is that reproducible? Is that useful? He other document domain, for example, using data URI. Yeah, in data URI context, it alerts in blank context, not in the application context. So you can add a document domain using data. So there are things you have to check. So there is not enough time in a regular day to check all that stuff. Yeah, and I won't simply buy all the stuff that I read just because someone tweeted or wrote about it. We have to think about it. We have to study it. So I think that uh, makes us to feel smaller. You start to think you are dumb because all the people out there know that stuff, but you don't, because there is so much to learn at the same time. So
Definitely.
that's why I stress again basics. Worry about yourself, about your own level of experience. Don't worry about the others. The others have to maybe 20 years, 10, 20 years of experience. So don't think you are less than anyone because of that.
Definitely, yeah. Sorry, somebody, it seems like the volume was a little bit low. Sorry about that, guys. Is the volume good now, or do you still have problems?
Yeah,
Okay, it sounds
yeah.
good. Seems
I
better.
I'm sorry, guys, but I can't because I'm without a proper audio setup here. I'm using the microphone of my laptop.
Oh no, it was my bad. It was my bad. I had OBS set up wrong. Your voice was a little bit low on OBS. That's why they couldn't hear you properly. But I gave it a little boost
Oh,
right now.
okay,
Um,
okay.
So something else I wanted to tell you is like I've heard a lot about upcoming scanners that automatically scan for for cross-site scripting. Do you think that's a valuable technique? And can you say if it's valuable in all fields of cross-site scripting, or does it have like a specific goal for you?
I'm not sure if I got that question,
Like
to be
there's
honest.
you have
Uh,
these scanners like XSS Strike, which will scan parameters for reflective cross-site scripting. But in my
so
opinion, sorry.
sorry.
No, I was just gonna say for me they never really worked. I don't know if they work for you, if you use them.
So I will try to answer that or discuss about that in general, and without trying to do any sales pitch about my own stuff, what, but it's kind of impossible because I have to talk about my tool too. But in general, those tools, since the very beginning of hacking, people used to code stuff using command line stuff, using language that you can call the program from the command line, like Python, now Golang, which is awesome. Both are awesome, and people start to code using that. And I was one of those too, but just for me, I don't use to code stuff and put online. So when I started to think something different, I thought, well, XSS is something that happens in the browser. In the browser, there's a JavaScript engine. We don't have that JavaScript engine in terminal, in command line. So of course you can't deal with HTTP requests because we are used to that with curl, wget, etc. But for cross-site scripting, I thought that there should be something different. But in those last years, the guys writing that kind of tools got really better at doing that stuff because you have to parse source code, and it's pretty hard to parse and get it right every time. I know because I deal with a tool too. There's a lot of problems and issues, but I think in general you can use those tools regardless if it's mine or not to increase your productivity. So you can be more productive if you use those tools because they automate your manual work, and there's a lot of manual work to find XSS for sure. So I think it's good to use like a WAF. People think WAF are useless, but WAF are good to use. It helps a lot. So I think it's kind of the same.
Definitely. Thanks for that. Yeah. That's a really good answer. You can do manual work while your tools are running, of course, and that makes double for your work while you're doing that. If you look for cross-site scripting, my methodology is basically just inserting a random value into every parameter that I find and then seeing where it's reflected, if at all, in the page in JavaScript. And then I go deeper. What's your methodology? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
We got a lot of questions like this right in the Twitter,
Yes.
and I thought awesome because it pinpoints the problem, the main problem here, because people have all those payloads, have all these blog posts, have all that information about cross-site script, but don't know exactly what to do with them. What you do with those lot of payloads, when to use one and not another. So it's all related to how you test the page. I will always name that page, not the application, because application is a set of pages. So you test one page at a time. Even if you are using a crawler or something, that page it's the unity of the code you have to deal with. So we test a page. How we test a page? We have to know the entry points, right? We have to know. We have to check the form if there's a form there. So that means there will be a post request, a post body with variables probably, There will be maybe a get URL with parameters on the URL carry. So we have the fragment of URL, which is the hash sign. After hash sign, we have some no entry points to test an application. So people are doing that right. When you test and use some dummy string or dumb data to see if there is a reflection. But my friend, this is not enough. Why I'm saying that? Because I'm using that, for example, in Nox, because there are other types of cross-site script that doesn't respond to that type of test. For example, header injection. How do you test header injection? It doesn't matter if you put some dumb string in a URL parameter or an HTML form because it's on header, right? So you have to test it in a different way. But header injection is not self-XSS. It is. So you need some other requirement, like a storage situation, using database, the regular one, or using cache. I have a good example of cache-based XSS via header injection. So there are things that are subtle, that you have to know. There are a lot of cases to check. That's it. Summarize. There are a lot of XSS cases to check. Most of them respond to play with the input, like I said, in the URL or in the post body. But there are some that are very special, and you have to know that, or you have to know and doing that to test, or you use a tool that performs that kind of test. So I try to cover many XSS cases as possible, both in my tool, in my blog, to show people that XSS, it's complicated to test, it's complicated to find, but it pays off because it's really, really a good thing to play with.
Definitely, and those entry points matter a lot. The special entry points, like finding a file upload and naming your file, cross-site scripting attack vector, thinking outside the box a little bit, My first cross-site scripting that I found, I was playing around in the web application, but I didn't find any pop-up, and then I opened the desktop application, and it turned out to just render an HTML5 page. So bam, there it popped up. So just playing around. Yeah. People don't seem to realize this, but you have to test every single parameter, every single one.
Exactly. And even maybe imagining new ones,
Yes.
That's the research job, I know, but people have to always think out of the box, There must be some other else entry point in that application. One have to think like that, Another good stuff to try is trying to guessing parameters,
Yes.
So there are a lot of tools doing that right now. Or nowadays, but I used to do that from years ago already. So that's another cool tip to try.
Definitely, or maybe even just reading the JavaScript file. I found a lot of parameters in JavaScript files that weren't used yet, but you could use them. They were usable.
Yeah.
Definitely something you can do. And what I also do is wayback URLs. Wayback URLs tends to give me some new parameters sometimes. So it really matters. And what I do usually is when I test my application, I have Burp Suite open in the background, because usually you will have things like hidden fields on a form, for example. And of course you can go check every single form, but sometimes I forget, and Burp has these really useful options to unhide hidden form fields and all of that stuff. That makes it a little bit easier for me.
Just came something to me now, which is the workflow. People who I talk about XSS, especially regarding Nox, I always stress the fact that there should be an workflow. a set of tools, a set of preparation of the cross-site scripting finding, because it's not just like a gun, that you just point it, boom. No, it's not like that. You have to scan the application, or you have to scan the attack surface to find out the servers. You find out the servers, and you choose one to go deeper, and then you run some tool there like Go Burster, G Burster, to find more pages, more folders, and then you can use a proxy like Zap proxy or Burp to go deeper in the investigation, and finally use a cross-site script tool like a command line based one or not, because that workflow it's needed to proper testing the stuff, not just I just woke up today and I will test that page and copy and paste and let the tool do the work for me. That won't work that way.
Definitely.
Your chances are minimal to get lucky that way. So there should be not just the methodology, but also the correct approach, using a decent workflow to get there.
Definitely, because I don't know about you, I don't know about the viewers, but I've had it happen where I'm testing my application, for example, and I can get my broken image to get reflected on the page, but my script doesn't execute. And in the beginning, when I first learned about cross-site scripting, I was like, what can this be? What am I doing here? And if you don't know about things like CSB, that can really upset you, because you're thinking, oh, my script is reflected, but it's not doing anything.
Yeah. Another stuff that happens is it's more basic, right? It's not related to CSP, but people sees they payload reflecting in DOM elements in the browser console, the browser developer tools, and ask why it's there, why it's not popping. It's because there is not like in the source code. In source code, it's sanitized, but you're seeing DOM elements like if it was an element, but it's not, because there's a color code there to follow. So that's something also that people get messed sometimes.
Funny story about that. When I first learned about DOM cross-site scripting, I was looking in the inspect source. I wasn't looking into the developer console. So I didn't find anything, of course. I was like, why is this not working?
The opposite way it's true also. So I always check first the source code, and then I get into DOM elements. If you want a tip about it, here is mine. Check first source code, because I use browser. I don't use a proxy to check the request. I use command line curl or the browser. So I always check source code first, then I get into the JavaScript parsed executed code, which is the DOM elements in the browser developer tools.
Definitely, yeah. And like, if you then pop one of those attacks, like if you've been searching for 3 days and you finally find that DOM cross-site scripting, sometimes it happens that you stumble upon cookies which have the HTTP only flag on. And a lot of people will get stuck there because they don't know what to do. Can you think of some things that people can do if they cannot steal the cookies?
Well, I would tell people to forget about cookies. If there's a cookie there, cool, get it, of course. But nowadays it's hard to find an application which has not HTTP only cookies. The ones that matter, right? Because cookies that can be public, they don't put that flag.
Of course.
So if there's one with HTTP only, you can be sure it's there because of that you can't steal that. So you can't steal, you think, well, man, but I learned that cross-site scripting is about stealing the cookie and getting to someone's account. Well, cross-site script is about breaking defense. Once you are in the browser of the victim, you can do a lot of things. One of them is to steal the anti cross-site request forgery token.
Yes.
So you get the token, for example, in CMS like WordPress, Joomla, Drupal, and you can get with that token you can perform a cross-site request forgery attack. So with that attack, you can change, for example, maybe it depends on application. You can change the user email. You can change the user password sometimes in core application. You can change any data, any personal data that you can give further access to the account. So it's easier and better and simpler to mount a cross-site request forgery attack after cross-site scripting successfully executing. So forget about the cookie. Forget about that request to exfiltrate cookies because that's something of the past. Go for cross-site request forgery attack.
Yeah, or even just executing any JavaScript function that's on the page. People often forget that, but if there are JavaScript functions available to, I don't know, make a purchase or something like that, just execute it, and that's also not very funny for the victim, of course.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
That reminds me, you were talking about CSRF tokens and stealing them. I did it the other way around for my third cross-site scripting. I found self cross-site scripting and I was able to elevate it to stored cross-site scripting because CSRF was not checked properly there. I could enter any CSRF token, so I could insert my own attack vector into anybody's account with just CSRF. So you can do it like
That's all.
stealing the CSRF, but you can also do it the other way around.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right. So chaining bugs, it's something people also can improve.
Definitely.
Most of the, I think 100% of the good bug hunters out there use that kind of technique to chain bugs to increase the payout. So it's definitely a good tip to give to our audience right now.
Definitely. And like you said a little bit about avoiding the basic stuff. What I tend to find is that a lot of people use the alert pop-up. Like that stuff I find is blocked 90% of the time because every single developer knows about the alert pop-up now. That's something like I try to
Try confirm. Try
yeah.
confirm box.
It's like trying these basic things to avoid what you find online. Like you might find the cross-site scripting and tag factor online, and then changing it a little bit to work a little bit differently. That's what really helps, you know. And sometimes people ask me if it's useful to use cross-site scripting polyglots. Do you have an opinion on that?
I have an opinion on that. I have an opinion on a lot of stuff, unfortunately, because I respect all kinds of work out there, and I'm pretty sure polyglots are useful in several situations. But if you are dealing with any basic kind of protection, filtering, WAF or not, that leading keyword JavaScript will flag you immediately. You get caught immediately. So one that is not used exactly to what he's doing might think, oh, that doesn't work here, or or this is not good, or there is not a vulnerability here, just because he copy and paste that polyglot. Maybe just removing that, or just making basic tests like HTML injection with a regular tag. I'm used to use the S tag, strike. So the text will be shown a strike. So people use H1 tag, and there are several words that won't get blocked that easily. So you can confirm there is something behind that. But if you start with a polyglot, you can't be sure if there is a vulnerability or not. You just maybe use the wrong string to test.
Definitely.
So
Yeah, that's my opinion as well.
one have to keep in mind it must be used with care. with care.
Definitely, yeah, and maybe even think about an alteration yourself. Maybe think of your own polyglot if you find them useful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
One
Yeah,
thing
and
I've
it's better to use polyglots without the JavaScript word too. They
definitely,
are less likely to be because the filters might get confused with all that stuff after JavaScript. But the JavaScript is easy, the most easy, I guess, to find. Script, that script tag, that we all learn in the beginning of JavaScript, scriptality one script, and JavaScript. So avoid as hell those keywords in the way they are. You can obfuscate, of course, you can try some tricks, but not in the way they are.
yeah, definitely, and that obfuscation is very important. Learning how you can
Yeah,
obfuscate them and thinking about different ways of writing a character, like the less than sign, the HTML
yeah,
entities,
yeah.
the URL encoding, and there's all of these different ways to write one character, and people often don't realize that. So definitely try all of them. I would say just see what you can do. If one thing is blocked, try another one. One thing I've been meaning to ask you as well, and for me the answer is pretty clear, but I want to know your opinion, is how deep do you think people should know JavaScript before they get into cross-site scripting?
To start with JavaScript, you can have a very basic level. So to start,
Definitely.
of course, with your advancement, you are evolving to the field. You are in need of more and more tricks and more understanding of JS language. But to start, maybe just knowing that what is a function. If you know programming language, any programming language, you know the other one is a function
Yeah,
that,
definitely.
that receives an argument, which is the one number. So I suggest you also to understand two basic objects, main objects of the cross-site script stuff, which is the window one and the document one. The document object, it's the document itself. It's where we base all the stuff that we receive from server. Uh, so document has a lot of methods and properties. So methods are functions, and properties will be strings that will carry some information. So I think that basic understanding of the JS, it's enough to start with cross-site script.
Definitely. Thanks a lot for that. That's what I've been wanting to know. And if you say, for example, come across a target and you're testing for cross-site scripting, and they have JavaScript, but it's very heavily obfuscated, will you take the time to de-obfuscate the JavaScript and read through it, or will you skip it and go on to the next thing?
Uh, I don't know because this question depends more on the goal of the guy behind it. So if you're a bug hunter and you are looking for bugs, you will do everything to find one, right? So it's not that much work to get the code, the obfuscate, beautify it. So you should do it. You should do that. You should read also the JavaScript. But as a researcher, I'm a researcher. Maybe people mess with those concepts like hunter and research. They're kind of different things. As a researcher, I don't have that much motivation to read all JavaScript code, obfuscated or not out there. So I usually look for the cases I want to check. So if I need to check it, I would de-obfuscate, of course. But so usually I think the answer is yes. You should de-obfuscate and check the source code.
Awesome, thank you. That means a lot to me because I've been doing it. I've been doing it often, not just for cross-site scripting, of course, but for everything. There are endpoints in there. There are secrets in there. There's sometimes even passwords in there. There's
Yeah,
comments in there. Guys, read the comments. That's a gold mine sometimes. I've had comments in
yeah,
JavaScript where they go like, this developer is an asshole. He made this formula and I don't understand it. It's just funny to read it sometimes.
Yeah, but just because you talk about developing, we in the hacking community used to make fun of the developers' mistakes. But there are a lot of guys in this community that who doesn't even know how to code, So it's easy to mock those guys who are on the other side, but it's not an easy job, man, to be a developer and make no mistake. So
Yeah.
I'm here to kind of protect them about that mistake that we do by judging them.
Definitely. We are humans and every human makes a mistake. That's the whole point of bug bounties. And that's why I'm so glad this exists as well. Because it really harnesses the power of the crowd and everybody has their own unique ideas about it. So that's why I really like the bug bounty stuff. As a researcher, I've tried to do some research myself. Do you often look at the RST documentation? So you use that in your research?
Uh, if I no, I don't read the documentation usually. Only if I was in the like I said, if I was doing some hunting, some bug hunting, I would do that. But in research, it's only needed if you really get deeper in some specific technology or some specific maybe kind of bypass. It needs it for research. It's something very specific. In general, which is my field of research. I don't really need to read much about it, especially because of my black box approach. One should tell me, but Brute, you should read the RFCs, to know which character to use. No, it's not needed. Just go black box and you find out which characters are accepted or not. Sometimes even the servers and applications and pages doesn't follow the RFC. So it's not even good to follow documentation sometimes. You should try things out of what is documented, so
Definitely, yeah. I can definitely
know,
get behind that approach. I myself am more of a white box tester in the sense that, like you say, I always need to read the JavaScript file. But I also like to, for me, I'm a QA test lead, so I do logic stuff pretty well. And I noticed that RFCs have a lot of ambiguous language in them, which is why browsers will not follow them. And that's why I like reading them so much, but it's really interesting to hear the black box approach as well, of just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. It's really interesting.
yeah. To be a black box guy, you must have something wrong in your mind, because you must try and try and try and try, and you get pissed off of trying a lot, but yeah, you break things angry. But some minutes later, get back to it again, until you find something interesting. So it's kind of like I don't know, vicious circle, something like that.
Definitely, yeah, for sure. When I did my research on BB code, I really find it interesting because BB code is for a big part open source, so I can just read the source code and see how it interprets everything that I throw at it, and how the filters work and all of that stuff. So that's interesting for me, but I'm sure that if I just throw more stuff at it randomly, that I'm going to find stuff that I couldn't even think of while doing white box testing. That's an interesting idea. I'm definitely gonna try that.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That's right. The opposite, it's true also. Black box guy can benefit for white box techniques, and vice versa.
Definitely. Yeah, it's interesting how many subdivisions there are in hacking. It's like we're cross-site scripting hunters, we're researchers, somebody's into white box testing, the other
Yeah.
person is into black box testing. Very diverse, very interesting. Um,
Yeah.
I was looking at your research recently about the shortest reflected cross-site scripting possible. And guys, if you haven't read that already, you guys should definitely go to Brutelogic's website. That's a really interesting piece of research. Um, like Is that also something you come up with by just throwing stuff at the wall? Like that, just seeing how you can make things shorter and trying it and then just going at it?
No, that one it's not really new, right? That's an old post. It was just something that I was wondering about how we could get shorter and shorter and shorter. So it was like in theory, in practice, it's harder to go that shorter. So it was just some. It's not that important, It's not really research. It's not really research. It's just some posts to read about XSS, but in practical use, there is not much impact. Of course, you can't get into some scenario like that. It's not that impossible, but it's pretty much unlikely. I recommend to use the good old ones, which is script source with a short domain name, and base href with a short domain name also. These are very good ones to use. So stick to them.
Yeah, because sometimes you come across these APIs that put a character limit upon the input, so it's really interesting.
Yeah,
That's a good technique.
like an injection in username field, and username field is 20 chars maximum, right? So, or even less. So it's hard.
Yeah, definitely. One thing I wanted to ask you as well is, have you ever encountered CSS cross-site scripting?
Oh no, this is very old stuff from Internet Explorer, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, exactly.
And it seems I'm not sure because I don't deal with Internet Explorer or Edge, Microsoft stuff. I have Kali Linux installed on my stuff all the time. I deal with Linux all the time. I don't use Windows. I know I'm a flower researcher. I should be researching all those operating systems, but I don't have time for everything, so I have to make some choice. My choice is Linux. I'm Linux-based guy. So, but I'm not sure if in Edge that came back, of that some kind of fallback to use to Internet Explorer to abuse that CSS stuff. But all I know, there are some libraries, JavaScript libraries that allows you to run code in the CSS area, like the less library. There was some flowered less library some time ago that you could run JavaScript inside the style, between the style tags, inside the style tag. So that's pretty much like it. I think CSS, if you have an injector in CSS place, you should go for dangling markup. Which is not XSS, but it's a client-side attack that can help you with in the attack overall. So dangling markup would be my choice, my way to go in that scenario.
Yeah, dangling markup is a really interesting topic. It's not cross-site scripting, but it does remind me of it somewhat. For the people who don't know, in dangling markup, we're basically going to try and exploit a vulnerability which will allow us to take part of the page and send it to our own web server. It's not really cross-site scripting, but really interesting technique.
Yeah, you have to automate that request and response to your own server to send to the other piece of code you are using to attack someone. That kind of the setup is really cool to see in practice working actually in a real attack. So it's pretty cool.
Definitely. One thing I wanted to ask you as well, and if you don't have an answer for it, that's okay, because this is pretty impromptu. But do you think cross-site scripting can ever lead to remote code execution?
Yeah, sure. Awesome. Sure. That's proven in CMS, WordPress, Joomla, Drupal.
That's really cool.
Again, because any other site, it doesn't need to be a CMS. It just need to have an admin there, that admin needs to be cross-site scripted. That he needs to trigger your payload. If it triggers a payload, that guy has access to the server to upload PHP code, for example. You can you can make it do it for you via CSRF, cross-site request forgery. So it's pretty much like that. The problem is to POC that, to proof of concept that, it's hard because it's a very target attack. So how you use that in bug hunt, it's kind of hard to prove that way. You fool that admin of the guys there of the program, they won't like that, you know.
Definitely.
So maybe they even tell you that you don't have a point because you need to make that guy collaborate to you or help you to trigger the XSS. But that possibility exists in the real world, in the real security world. If you have, if you want to attack some site that have WordPress installation, for example, just grab information about the admin, try to send him some emails. Yeah, just make him click in your stuff while he's logging in, and boom.
Yeah, it's really easy.
It's
Bug bounties is nothing like hacking in the real world because so many things for us are out of scope that it's insane. Like social engineering is out of scope and all of that stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, one thing I wanted to ask you as well is what resources do you recommend people who want to get into cross-site scripting? What can they go and learn? Where can they go to?
You mean starting in the
like maybe a
beginner
or a website to learn?
Well, I can only point to mine, right? My own blog. But before going there, I recommend to know some stuff like HTML. One must know how to write at least simple HTML code. Some basic JavaScript, like we have talked about, and HTTP protocol. One needs to know what is a GET, what is a POST, some headers, the body of the request. Maybe basic stuff like that too. Web servers, install Apache and PHP, which is the simplest combo out there, and try to make some code in your own lab, your own machine, and then you can start to play with XSS, especially all the payloads out there, which are crazy ones. Start with the basic ones, get some basic stuff first, and then begin to evolve in that matter.
Definitely. I also have your website open right now, so if anybody wants to visit this website, it's brutelogic.com.br. Really interesting.
Yeah.
Definitely recommend it. You can see how many posts there are. It's freaking awesome. And if you can't get enough, there's a cross-site scripting cheat sheet by Brute. Amazing, guys. I always have this on me when I go hunting, so definitely recommend it.
Yeah, me too. We had to talk about that, right? Even I don't remember all the stuff there, so even I have to read sometimes again to remember and try some of the tricks there.
And it's only like $20 as well. I was like, what? I have to grab this right now. So yeah, thank you.
It's just that. And in Black Fridays, there is even a 50% discount, so it's even cheaper.
For the price of 2 coffees at Starbucks, you can get an amazing book. So definitely recommend this.
Yeah, there are guys that can make I don't know, $300 with just one cross-site script, and it's not on Google or Facebook. It's just on regular sites. So I think it's pretty much pays off.
Definitely. That's also what I say about my course. It's like, if you guys, okay, it might be 125 euros, but that's nothing compared to a bug that you might find. So it's a bit of an investment in yourself, of course. Now, of course,
Yeah.
neither you nor I can promise anybody finding a bug, but we've done a lot of research into these topics, and all of our work is combined into these books and into these courses. So it's a way to skip a lot of the work, in my opinion. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There are a lot of free stuff out there. They have
Definitely.
their place. I think everything have their places. Paid free stuff, things that people think are useful or not. Everything has its place. So there are several other sources of these vectors and payloads, but there I try to put it in a way that one can can see and know exactly where and why he should use that kind of payload. So that's why you one needs to read and you read, because it's hard to get all those in mind and remember by heart when you are approach an application. You just have to remember what the situation is, what the scenario is. So you think, oh, I think I've heard about that kind of stuff in that cheat sheet of Brutelogic. So you can go there and try to give a Control F in the keyboard and look for that keyword, and you will get there. It may help you or not, but at least you will have one more thing to use or to think about.
Exactly, and you can always Google if you don't find your answer immediately in the cheat sheets, but you at least have a point to start from. That's the
Yeah,
hardest part for me usually. I can attack, I can see a reflected value, but where do I go from there?
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I have a sample open of the book right here. There's a sample on the website. I would definitely recommend you guys go check it out because it's definitely really good. Um, that was about it for me. I don't have any more questions. I don't know if you have any more tips maybe for our viewers that you can give them.
Uh, while we are talking, we think about a lot of things to talk after. But when you send me that question, there's a blank on Windows
I've
stuff.
written
But
down some things that you've said, like some basic tips that I will remember from our conversation is that you have to get your basics right. Learn your basics really, really well,
yes,
and then look for it
yes, yes,
everywhere by trial and error, by looking at the latest bypasses available on Twitter, by Googling the
yeah,
latest bypasses. And then you can always use tools to be a bit more productive as well. Tools like Nose,
yeah,
for example, or other tools.
yeah,
And then, of course, you have to know when to use what payload. That's one of the most important parts of it.
yeah,
Um, one page at a time. You're only testing one page at a time. That's also what I remembered. One application is
yeah,
basically
yeah,
just a bunch of entry points on a bunch of pages. And then you check the get request, check the post request for all the parameters, see which ones are able to be inserted and reflected. And then what's also useful is those parameters, of course, guessing parameters, finding them in JavaScript files, all of that stuff. That's a bunch of tips that I got from you, so thank you very, very much for that. I really appreciate it. And
cool.
people say,
I just got one tip to give, which is something we were talking about in the beginning. Not today, but some days ago, about the DOM stuff. The the three sinks case, which I have a blog post talking about it. It simplifies a lot, which is DOM. DOM based XSS. DOM based XSS is much more than that. Just to be clear, but as a starting point for someone who doesn't know anything or just heard about it on basic but can't understand, start with my blog post about it, the three sinks, which shows three important cases of DOM basic case that most of the easy ones, DOM flaws out there, fall into these three categories. which is document sync, location sync, and evaluation sync.
Yes, the execution sync.
Execution sync. Yeah. Which is used eval. It's kind of the same. So you guys who don't know what I'm talking about or don't know that blog post, please check on my website, butelogic.com.br, the three syncs. So because it's good to know the base of DOM too, because DOM is another complicated area of XSS that must be studied too. And some cases there, you won't see the reflection in source code or even in DOM elements. The location one, for example, you won't see the JavaScript alert one anywhere there. The browser will just redirect you to that pseudo protocol stuff, which is JavaScript, and you will pop the alert. So that's one of those cases, the exception case we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very, very much. That's really helpful. Thank you for everything. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate your time.
It was awesome, man. Let's do some part two if people did like this one.
Yeah, definitely. If you liked it, put something in the chat, guys.
You guys watching can ping me or him to part two if you really want us to do that, because there is a lot to talk about cross-site script all the time. Maybe we should even create a podcast, a weekly podcast about it, which is really awesome.
We should grab Lupin. We should grab Lupin in that weekly podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Probably in one of them he will be able to join us, because he's Ronnie. Yeah, his name is Ronnie Carter. It's an awesome, talent young guy who is in the field too. You guys will hear a lot about him in the future. He's an awesome guy to deal with. So
definitely
go to follow him too.
Yeah, I will put some links in the description of this video as well, so you guys can find Brutelogic and his website, and Ronnie as well, of course. They say never meet your heroes, but I think that's a lie, because my hero is amazing. Thank you so much, amazing hacker.
I'm just a regular guy with regular problems.
Yes.
I just got my place in the community. I'm very proud of being part of this special group. That is, we are not perfect. We are just humans, but we are all here trying to make something interesting and good most of the time for people out there, for the internet itself. So we should be proud of and try to get better and better each day. So I thank you for the opportunity. Thank you guys watching for all the support you gave me and gave it to me and to Wesley too. So you are awesome. Thanks a lot. Till the next time.